Hello, my name is Jonathan Silverblood. This is a progress report of the CashID Identity Manager and Authentication System. Before we start, I'd like to say that this is the first time that I've streamed an Android screen so that I can have both a website and an Android screen at the same time, and as a result, I haven't been able to get rid of some latency between the two, which will be horribly annoying. But let's go through and do this anyway. So, the purpose of this video is to show the process for downloading, installing, configuring, and using the Identity Manager. On my left-hand screen, I have a browser here with CashID.info app, and on that site, there is a download the Identity Manager for Android. When you click that, it asks if you want to download a file. It will probably complain about it being not a secure way to install applications, and that is correct. When you open it, it asks if you want to install the application, and once installed, it's pretty straightforward to open it. Alright, I'm going to open the application, and the first time you start the Identity Manager, it's going to ask you a question, which is, should we load the contact marked as device owner? If you answer yes to this and give the subsequent permission, then the application will open your address book and look for a contact marked as self or me, and use that contact to pre-fill your CashID default values for your profile. This is a convenience feature. You're free to say no thank you and skip this permission if you feel that the app should not be able to do this. For this demonstration, I'm going to click yes please, and I'm going to grant the permission. What happens next is that it shows me my profile, and I'm going to say that my name, my nickname, and all the way down here, I'm going to say that my Twitter account are data I'd like to share, if available, by default. I save this profile, and this takes me to the home screen. In this home screen, we have a button that says User in the bottom left corner here. And by clicking it, you open the dialog you just saw. This dialog means you can edit your profile whenever you want to. There's also a load from address book button you can use to refill and overwrite the data or request it for the first time if you didn't answer yes during the startup. In the bottom right corner, we have a menu which you can use to configure the features of the application. And I'm going to enable anonymous verification because I want to showcase how that works a bit later. So what is the purpose of this application? This Identity Manager, the purpose of it is to send information to websites and services which need authentication in one form or another. And on this example page here on demo.cashid.info, we can see several types of requests, but I'm going to go through most of them in order. So the first is the minimal authentication request. The minimal authentication request is a request to authenticate, but it does not have a context, doesn't have an action, doesn't have a reason or a purpose. All it does is that it asks the user to take a private key, make an address, and sign the message with that address and private key, so that you can prove that the address actually belongs to the user. I'm going to click these handshakes in the bottom of the app, and it now asks me if I want to allow it to record video. I'm going to say yes here, and then I'm going to scan the QR code for the minimal authentication example. This is how a request looks like in the application. It says up here, authenticate create a new identity, use an anonymous entity, or dismiss this authentication request. And I'm going to create a new identity right now. This brings us to a share with page. And in the future, when there is no requested information, or the information that is requested is only information that has previously been sent, then I'm going to skip showing the screen and just go ahead and send it. But right now, the screen will always show after you select an identity. No information was requested, so it says service did not ask for required or optional information. So I'm going to send this authentication request, and the server responds back and says everything's just dandy. On the website, you can see the user has successfully been authenticated, and this means that the address here, together with this signature here, has been validated against this message here to prove that I indeed control this address. Let's move on to a more useful example, and probably the most common way to use this technology, which is logging in to a website. Again, I choose scan, and I look at the QR code. This time, it says log in to CashID instead of authenticate, because we have an action here named login. And I now have my identities here, my last used, and a list of my linked identities, and I can dismiss the login request. So this is an example how the application is context aware for the actions. It can present different information. Since we already have an identity here, I'm going to use that, but we can see here in the request that they want an optional nickname, which is this O equals I3 up here. So when I click create new identity, that's fine. We'll make a new identity. You can see here that it's going to look at optional information, and it's a pre-ticked and pre-filled with my nickname. For this identity, though, I'm going to take a different nickname. It takes Toshi, because why not? And I'm going to choose to share it and send the login response. As you can see here on the website, it says the user has successfully been logged in. And if this were a real service that would actually be meaningful, you would be logged in and be able to do the things that only logged in users can do, and it would know who you are because you have the identifier. Now, if we look at the list here, you can see that we have two identities. One is listed by its address and one is listed by its nickname. We try to use the most specifying information we have, as long as it's humanly readable when present the identities. That means that we prefer the nickname to the address, we prefer an email to the address, but most of all we prefer a first and family name, given a family name. So, moving on to the next example is signing up for a newsletter. And this is a register request. It says here action register, and it actually has a data field that tells us what we are registering to. So when I scan this QR code and it shows me the request, it shows register for newsletter provided by CashID.info. That means it's aware of the register and it's aware of what it is registering for. And I'm going to use my Satoshi identity for this one and show you what that means. Alright, no place here do they want my nickname, so previous information doesn't really matter here. I'm going to type in Sweden. I'm going to say that I am Jonathan Silverblad, I live in Sweden, and this is my email address. I'm also going to share my age of 35, but I'm not going to share my city because I don't want to right now. I click to send the registration request, and the site now says the user has successfully registered to the newsletter. You can see here in the metadata that an email has been listed and the age is there. So If this were a real service, for example, a newsletter, weekly newsletter on Bitcoin.com or such, then from this simple request, just scanning, entering, and going forward with it, they would now have an email to which they could send a newsletter like weekly. They have a name and a family that they can address it to. I'm now going to reload this example request, and I'm going to scan the login request again to show you the difference here. If I take the other linked identity I have and I set MonsterBit as the nickname for it and send the request, then it updates here and says MonsterBit. So we now have two different identities by names, and if we were to scan the login request once more, and choose any of these, say for example the Jonathan Silbud identity, we can see here that the nickname is pre-filled and disabled. I can change it. This is because this is the information that I had previously shared for this identity with this service, and instead of the user making the mistake of sharing the wrong information, the application keeps track of which information has been used for which identity, so that it is consistent when you reuse it. That was an error I'm going to have to fix. My bad. Alright, so there's only one more thing to show, I guess, and that is the anonymous identification. So I'm going to scan a code for the minimal authentication request. And then I'm going to select use anonymous identity, and like before, it's going to show me which information I want to share, in this case none, and I'm going to send the authentication request. The website gets the authentication, says everything is just fine, but if we look on the application in the home screen here, no new identity was added, and that is because anonymous identities are one-time use. You use them for a single request and then they are thrown away and discarded forever. Nothing is ever stored about them. There is a lot of things that you can do with this technology when you look at these action and data parameters. And I will go into depth in the future some unique cases that relates to payment, for example. But for now, all I wanted to show was that the system is now ready for a beta. It's ready to be tested by people. There is a full specification available. There is libraries for implementation, and there is an app that users can use. If you have any question, feel free to join and talk about this either on GitLab or on Discord or elsewhere. You can find it by searching on the internet. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.